Afghanistan floods. I found my family's bodies in the street. Many homes are swept away by the torrential floods. The day after flood water hit, Nur Muhammad found bodies of his family in the street and in the field. The 75-year-old had been just 100 meters away from his home in northern Afghanistan, where he heard the deadly roar of the water approaching. Nur ran towards the house where his wife, sister, son, and two of his grandchildren were resting, but it was too late. The sudden torrent of water swept away his family and the home. Nur Muhammad lost his wife, sister, son, and two grandchildren when the flood waters hit. Flash flood hit on Friday caused by the combination of the unusually heavy storms following a dry winter, which had left the ground too hard to absorb all the rain. The destruction stretches for miles. The World Food Program says that more than 100 people had died and 2,000 homes destroyed in the flooding, which affected 5 districts in the northern Afghan province of Baghlan. The number of casualties is expected to rise. The provinces of Badakhshan, Ghor, and Western Herat were also severely damaged. I felt helpless, Nur says. It was early evening when he frantically searches the area around his home in the village of Gaz in Baghlan, but could not find any trace of his family. He gave up at 1 a.m. and in the middle of night walked to his daughter Saeda's house 3 hours away. He returned home the next day and found the bodies of his family. It was devastating, he says. Nur says he has never experienced anything like it in his life, either from the natural disasters that frequently hit the area, nor or the civil wars that had flooded the country. Saeda, whose 25-year-old daughter was one of the Nur's grandchildren who died, says, "The approaching storm sounded like the monster and they are terrified. In Nur's village, which is still inaccessible by road, most families have lost at least 2 or 3 relatives in the floods and are in desperate need of help. I have traveled to areas where everything is completely gone," says Nuzatullah, a nurse who visited one of the worst hit villages called Pullur with his team. The floods have left many survivors with little or no shelter or possessions. Uprooted trees, rocks, bricks, and mangled cars stick out of the thick mud in floor. Once sticky with water in the heat, it has started to harden, making it even more difficult for those still digging, pulling out possessions. Mohammad Gu is using a shovel to dig through the 2 rooms of his house. "We haven't got even a glass left for the cup of tea. There is nothing," he tells the BBC. "The only thing he's been able to salvage is the twisted bicycle, which he rolls onto a donkey." Days after the flooding, some families are still searching for the bodies of their loved ones. At one house crowded gathers, the body of a girl has been found. She is covered in the seat and taken away by the ambulance. Luzatullah rushes to the area along with 15 other nurses, paramedics, and doctors. He says they helped more than 200 injured people, including one man who have lost 60 members of his family, but they have not been able to reach some remote areas where people desperately need aid. There is no drinking water, Luzatula says, warning there might be outbreak of waterborne disease such as typhoid and dysentery. These women have been to the funeral, one of the many being held in the area. In the areas that they have been able to reach, the team has started to set up mobile at the center and working to remove the dead bodies. At each village, the BBC is met with another story of loss. One man shows us the picture of his 5-year-old nephew, Abu Bakr. He was playing with his grandfather when the water hit. As they tried to escape, Abu Bakr was swept away. He had clung too tightly to his grandfather's leg as he tried to save himself that he left a mark. His mother could only watch as he lost his grip. Abdul Khalik was out of town when he heard about the flood. By the time he returned, all that was left of his family's houses was one small piece of bathroom wall. The rest is now flattened. Of 18 people, 10 of his family died, swept away. We were searching family members in knee-deep mud, so we took off our shoes and continued searching, he says. Eventually, we found their bodies miles away from here. Abdul Khalik, where his home once stood. Others tell of the moment the disaster struck. A shout went out that the water was coming. Some were able to get out of his path but lost all their possessions. I struggled to reach the next flood amidst the chaos. Our home and all our livestock were swept away, says Zuhra Bibi, who is now sleeping in the tarpaulin tent. She says she never seen anything like this before in her lifetime. Flooding is not uncommon, but in 20, 40, 60 years, we're told, none have seen a flood like this in their area. In the village of Gudam Bala, Mohammed Lasur is chain smoking cigarettes next to the field where his crops once grew. Now the field is a pool of the thick muddy water. A arc of farmland, fields of cotton and wheat crops have been completely destroyed. We drive through the wheat field that have been cut in two by the force of the water, ripping out the green stalk, leaving gray rubble behind. Mohammed Rasul stands in front of the remains of his house and the crops that were meant to provide for his family. Mohammed feels fortunate that his family has survived, but says he has lost everything else. He shows me the fields where his crops have been ruined. This was the only source of income I had, he says. I feel helpless. Like 80% of Afghans, he depends on the agriculture for his income. Mohammed says he's now sure how they will survive. He points to the remains of his house in the distance. He cannot return because the flood waters are still too high. I don't have anything now. What should I do? I have family to provide for, but I have nothing. Even if the floods hit, the UN estimates that about 24 million people, more than half of the population of Afghanistan, will need some form of humanitarian assistance this year. It is not just the crops that have been affected. Mohammed says that his neighbor lost his two cows in the flood. They are the man's only way of making a living. And Noor, who is staying with his daughter, says the only possessions he has left are the clothes he is wearing. He had lived in the house that was swept away since he was a young boy. His father built in 65 years old. I had hopes about the future, he says. My son and granddaughter were teachers, and I was proud because they are contributing to the future of the country. Both are now dead. The floods took everything, he says. All Potter's copyright. Landslide kills 25 after heavy snow in Afghanistan.